Is your HOA always this fair? The gate camera beeped as Karen slapped a yellow claim review sticker onto my wife's pink Porsche, the porch light flicking across her clipboard like a silent warning. She blocked the hood with her body, then claimed the car qualified for reassignment, and the whole driveway froze for a beat. But when my attorney dropped the real ledger on her desk, complete with a paper stamp, the red tape glow on her face shifted from confident to cornered. Next week, the clubhouse went quiet under the posted freeze order, and everyone finally saw who'd pushed too far. The gate camera beeped the moment my wife's new pink Porsche rolled under the Maple Ridge Arch and into the subdivision. It was still early enough that the air had a chill, the kind that hangs on right before the sun decides if it's going to be warm or not. Our driveway sat clean and empty concrete pale against the patch of lawn I kept trimmed myself. The little black HOA camera on the lamppost tracked the Porsche like a hawk, the red light blinking as the plate and VIN passed under it. My wife eased the car into the driveway and shut it off. The engine gave a soft, expensive sigh. She stepped out wearing her blue scrub jacket, hair pulled back, eyes tired but proud. She looked at the Porsche and smiled the way people do when they see proof that all those extra shifts amounted to something. "Well?" she asked. "Still think it's too loud." "In color or in price?" I said. She laughed once. "Both." "It's fine," I said. "Driveway's ours, car's yours. HOA can go stare at someone's mailbox for a change." The camera let out another tiny beep like it had an opinion. Out by the entrance, the big white sign for Maple Ridge Estates stood over its flower bed. Someone had polished the metal plate that carried the line 112-07 HOA Ownership Rules. The breeze caught it just right, and the sign creaked as it shivered. I didn't know yet that was my warning. Heels clicked on the sidewalk before I saw her. I turned, and there she was coming down the street with that determined HOA stride clipboard clamped to her chest like a shield. Coral blazer, cream blouse hair in a neat blonde bob. Sunglasses parked on top of her head like a siren. "Morning," I said. "We got a welcoming committee now." She didn't say hello. She stopped at the end of my driveway, eyes sliding from the Porsche to my wife to me. "You must be the new vehicle," she said, looking straight at the car. My wife frowned. "I'm the nurse who bought it," she said. "The car's the car." Karen finally looked at her, then back at me. "I'm Karen Hudson," she said. "President of the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association." "Yeah," I said. "We've met. 3 letters about my trash cans, remember?" "This is different," she said, lifting her clipboard. "This Porsche qualifies for reassignment under HOA ownership." I stared at her for a second. "Run that by me again." She clicked her pen, once a sharp little sound. "Under 112-07 HOA Ownership Rules," she said, "certain assets are classified as community impact property. This vehicle meets multiple triggers: value, color, visibility. Until review is complete, it cannot be treated as standard private property. It's my wife's," I said. "That makes it private property by definition." The gate camera beeped again like it was keeping score. Karen ignored me and flipped a page on her clipboard. "The gate log shows this Porsche entered the subdivision at 03:17 this morning with no prior asset declaration on record." She pulled a sheet free and held it out just enough for me to read the top line. "Notice received. 03:17. Claim review." "What is this?" my wife asked. "A formal notice that reassignment is under consideration," Karen said. "As of now, the Porsche's ownership is pending under HOA authority until review complete." My wife blinked. "Pending under who HOA jurisdiction?" Karen said. "You'll still operate it, of course, but the association must determine if full private ownership is appropriate." "That's not a thing I said. You don't get to downgrade reality with wording. Pending HOA ownership isn't real ownership." Across the street, old Mr. Dempsey neighbor number 1 for every rumor in the subdivision stood by his mailbox pretending to read yesterday's junk mail. He wasn't even trying to hide the fact he was listening. "She's trying to claim it," he muttered mostly to himself, but loud enough for all of us. Karen's jaw tightened. "This is not about claiming," she snapped. "This is about compliance. Color placement impact resale expectations. Resale. To who my wife cut in. You. Karen didn't answer. She pulled a yellow sticker from behind the notice. Block letters temporary, HOA, hold, do not move. My wife took a step toward the car. You're not putting that on my paint. Karen stepped closer, heels ticking on concrete. It's required. Until Form 14B is processed, towing will need to know this vehicle is in review. I moved between her and the Porsche, not touching her, just occupying the space she wanted. Form 14B, I said. You already filled it out, didn't you? A corner of a second sheet peeked from under the notice. At the top, I caught the line, Form 14B, Asset Reassignment Draft, and below that the word Porsche typed in black ink. She shifted the clipboard back against her chest before I could read more. That's administrative, she said, and the board will see it. You don't need to. I think we do, I said. You'll see the outcome, she corrected. Then, without another word, she reached around me and slapped the sticker onto the lower corner of the windshield. 2 quick smacks like she was sealing a deal. My wife sucked in a breath. The sticker glared bright against the soft pink paint. I peeled it off slowly, keeping my eyes on Karen. Glue stretched in snarls and then tore. Karen lifted her phone and took a picture. That was a documented notice, she said. You just created evidence of non-compliance. Write it up, I said. Write up all the fiction you want. It still won't make this your car. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't about my car, she said. It's about our standards. That vehicle was never meant to be privately owned within this community. There it was, the line she'd been circling since she walked up. My wife folded her arms. I worked 30 years to buy something nice, she said. You weren't there at 3 in the morning when I was changing IV bags. You don't get to decide if I'm allowed to enjoy it. Karen inhaled through her nose. The board will review the reassignment, she said. Until then, I suggest you treat that Porsche as if it's already part of the HOA's long-term planning. I took 1 step down the driveway, just enough to put the gate camera, the sign, Karen, and the car all in the same line. Let me make something clear, I said. You can throw every section and subsection at us. You can beep and print and file all night. I nodded at the sign that said Porsche 207 HOA Ownership Rules, and then back at her. But you just claimed the wrong house, Karen. The yellow sticker was still on the windshield when I walked into the garage that morning. Claim Review. HOA, printed across it like a warning flare. My wife stood beside the Porsche with her arms wrapped around herself, coffee cup tucked into one hand like she needed the heat to stay steady. She didn't have to say anything. The sticker said enough. The garage smelled like oil and metal, the usual mix. My tools hung in neat rows behind the workbench, each socket lined up the way I liked. But the Porsche didn't belong in that line of order, not with that ugly yellow sticker clinging to the glass. The tube lights overhead flickered once before brightening. For a second, it felt like the whole room exhaled. Then Miller walked in. He had the kind of presence that made rooms pay attention. Gray hair, worn leather briefcase, tie slightly crooked like he'd already been arguing with someone this morning. He stopped in front of the car, bent down, and read the sticker. Hudson's overreaching, he said flatly. No kidding, I muttered. My wife lifted her cup. Do they really get to mark people's cars like this? No, Miller said. Not unless the owner approves it, which you didn't. He tapped the sticker once with the back of his knuckle. Hudson wants to intimidate. She's good at that, but intimidation doesn't survive paperwork. I crossed to the workbench and grabbed my phone off the charger. Speaking of paperwork, I said you need to see this. I opened Karen's email, the one that had arrived at 02:41 a.m., time-stamped right after the gate camera logged the Porsche at 03:17. She must have been up half the night getting her story ready. At the bottom of the message was the attachment Form 14B Asset Reassignment Request, Draft. I handed Miller the phone. He didn't react at first. He scrolled slowly, silently, reading line after line like someone reviewing a medical chart he already suspected held bad news. Then he stopped. Zoomed in. Well, he said quietly, there's your smoking gun. My wife stepped closer. What is that? Form 14B, Miller said. Most HOAs only use something like this for communal property trail maintenance vehicles, seasonal equipment, that sort of thing. He turned the phone so we both could see. His fingertip tapped one line near the top. Vehicle, Porsche Pink. Proposed reassignment to HOA Reserve Asset List. The word proposed was underlined. She tried to file this, he said. This isn't a review, this is a claim. She literally attempted to insert the Porsche into HOA records. My wife's breath caught. She actually typed it in. Typed, Miller said. Saved, attached. The only reason it's not filed yet is probably because she wanted to walk up to you first and scare you into cooperating. I rubbed a hand over my face. So she thinks if she gets the form in the system before we react, she can pretend this is procedure. That's her game, Miller said. But the covenant rules work both ways. He walked around the front of the Porsche, inspecting it like it was evidence in a case which technically it now was. You still have full title and registration, he asked. In the kitchen drawer, my wife said, I can get it. Bring it, he said. We'll need clean copies. She hurried inside. Miller lowered his voice. Listen, this isn't about color or price or neighborhood aesthetics. He looked directly at me. Hudson wants to prove she can take something people care about. She wants precedent. If she can claim this, she can claim anything. My jaw tightened. Not this. Not her car. No, Miller said. Not if we get ahead of her. My wife returned with the envelope of documents, holding them like something fragile. Miller checked the dates, VIN signatures, every detail. Good, he said. Everything's clean. She overplayed her hand. He set the documents on my workbench and pulled out his briefcase. Inside was a stack of blank HOA request forms. What are those? I asked. Your first counterstrike, Miller said. A formal covenant request for clarification under the transparency clause, and right after that he pulled out another form. A ledger access request. If she's been drafting reassignment entries, they'll show up in the server logs. My wife leaned against the Porsche. So, we're fighting her claim. Miller shook his head. We're not fighting her claim, he said. We're disproving it. That hit different. Like someone finally turned the lights on in a room we'd been stumbling through. And when we send these requests, I asked what happens. Hudson will have to answer, Miller said. And the second she answers, she'll have to explain why she was trying to appropriate a vehicle she doesn't own. A quiet moment settled over the garage. Me, my wife Miller, and the soft tick of the Porsche's cooling engine. Then Miller handed me a pen. Send the requests, he said. She'll have to show her motive. I looked at the sticker still lying on the workbench. Then at the car, then at the forms. Fine, I said. Let's make her explain why she tried to claim it. The printer in Miller's office started before he even said hello. That thin mechanical whir filled the room, and a single sheet of paper slid out into the tray as I stepped inside. Right on time, Miller said, glancing at the screen on his desk. Your HOA finally responded. He picked up the printout and handed it to me. Your requested ledger, he said, apparently. I looked down. 2 lines. That was it. Line 1, Community Landscaping, $1,200. Line 2, Community Vehicle, Upgrade, $4,900. That's the whole ledger, I asked. According to Hudson's treasurer, Miller said, 1 quarter's worth of reserve activity. I squinted at it. What's Community Vehicle Upgrade? That, Miller said, is what I'd like to know. He took the paper back and slid it onto a clear plastic stand next to his keyboard. Then he opened the email on his screen again. Here, he said, pointing. Look at the attachment properties. He clicked a little arrow and a gray box popped up on the corner of the screen. Ledger QTR2.pdf. Created 11:02 a.m. Last edited 11:11 a.m. Edited 9 minutes before they sent it, Miller said. For a ledger that supposedly covers 3 months. So they cut it down, I said. More like carved, he replied. If this is all they have, they're either incompetent or hiding everything they don't want us to see. The printer gave another little whir, like it agreed. I don't see the Porsche mentioned, I said. It's implied, Miller said, tapping Community Vehicle Upgrade. You don't spend $4,900 on a vehicle upgrade in a neighborhood like Maple Ridge and forget to specify what it is. That's either your wife's car or some other poor soul's four wheels. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on his desk. My wife's name lit up the screen. I picked up. Yeah. Did you see the new email? She asked. Her voice was tighter than it had been this morning. What email? From Karen, she said. Subject line. Notice number 2. Color violation. I closed my eyes. Read it. She took a breath. I could hear paper crinkling. This notice is to inform you, she read, that the exterior color of the vehicle currently parked at your residence is in violation of Maple Ridge Aesthetic Palette Guidelines. Miller raised an eyebrow. Keep going, he mouthed. I did. She says, failure to comply with color and placement guidelines may result in the HOA reassuming ownership of the vehicle for community asset planning. There was a short silence while that sank in. Reassuming, I repeated. She can't reassume something she never owned. That's what it says, my wife answered. There's more, but that line jumped out. In the body, or in bold, I asked. Bold, she said, right in the middle. Miller held out his hand. I put the call on speaker and set the phone on his desk. This is Miller, he said. I'm with your husband. Could you forward that email and the attached PDF to my address? He'll give it to you in a second. Please do, my wife said, because if I have to read that line again, I'm going to throw my phone at the HOA sign. I rattled off Miller's email. I just sent it, she said. And, for the record, I am not repainting my car beige. We're not painting anything I said. We're going to paint them into a corner. She snorted once despite herself. You promise I do, I said. I'll call you after we look at it. The call ended. Miller refreshed his inbox. The new message appeared almost immediately. Notice number 2, color violation forwarded. He opened it. Karen's wording was worse on the big screen. Formal greeting. Fake sympathy. Several paragraphs of HOA speak about visual harmony and long-term branding of the subdivision. And right in the center, the line my wife had flagged bold and smug, failure to comply, may result in the HOA reassuming ownership of the vehicle for community asset planning. Miller leaned back in his chair. There it is, he said. She moved from implied claim to explicit threat. That's legal, I asked. He shook his head. It's theatrical, he said, not legal. Hudson's trying to bluff you into thinking she has the power to take the Porsche if you don't obey her color chart. He clicked open the attached PDF of the notice. At the top it read, Notice number 2. Color violation, claim review continued. And down at the bottom in tiny letters, reference form 14B, draft, asset reassignment. That's our link, Miller said. Form 14B, the ledger entry, and now this reassuming ownership threat. She's building a paper trail that pretends your wife's car is already half inside the HOA's pocket. I looked at the ledger again, 2 lonely lines, and that one loaded phrase. Community vehicle upgrade, I said. $4,900, which just happens to be within spitting distance of what the board could argue as a reserve valuation, temp line, Miller said. If anyone lets them. Which we won't, I said. Miller's expression hardened. We asked for a full ledger, he said. Instead, we get this cut-down PDF that was edited 9 minutes before sending, plus a notice threatening to reassume ownership. That's not transparency, it's choreography. He picked up a pen and tapped it twice on the desk. If they don't submit a complete ledger within 10 business days, he said we have grounds to ask the court to freeze their reserve fund until they can explain where the money went and why they were trying to claim a resident's car. My phone buzzed again, a new email. Karen, this time. Shorter, meaner. I opened it and read out loud, Given your lack of cooperation with the reassignment review, I read, the Porsche will be managed under HOA authority until further notice. Miller didn't even blink. That line, he said, is going to look fantastic, read into the record. He opened a blank document and started typing notes, the keys snapping with each word. Ledger, request denied in substance, he said. Threat of reassuming ownership. Declaration that the Porsche will be managed under HOA authority. He stopped typing and looked up at me. "You see what this is now," he said. "She doesn't want a compromise. She wants proof she can take something that isn't hers and dare you to stop her." I stared at the notice at the ledger at that stupid phrase, community vehicle, upgrade, $4,900. The engine hum from the hallway printer faded. The office felt very quiet. "Can we stop her?" I asked. Miller slid the ledger back into the plastic stand like evidence on display. "Yes," he said, "but we're done asking nicely." He picked up his pen again and set it on top of the stack of forms we'd already filed. "We push once more for a real ledger," he said. "If they stonewall us again, we take it to the judge. And then, he said, we ask the court to freeze their reserve fund until every line makes sense." I watched him for a second, then nodded. "Freeze it," I said. The community center had never been this crowded. Rows of folding chairs filled the hall, everyone taken neighbors with crossed arms whispering behind programs glancing toward the front where Karen Hudson stood on the small stage like she was directing a play she wrote herself. The overhead lights were a smeared yellow buzzing softly. Outside the window, parked perfectly in view, like an exhibit, was my wife's pink Porsche, clean polished and still wearing the faint ghost of where the sticker had been. Karen lifted her clipboard and tapped the microphone twice. Tap, tap. The sound carried like a gavel. "Thank you all for attending this emergency HOA assessment meeting," she said. Her smile was tight rehearsed. "Today, we address a matter involving community property and aesthetic compliance." A flyer lay on every chair. "Emergency assessment community asset planning with subtext too vague for comfort." I picked one up. The ink smelled fresh. Too fresh. Miller leaned toward me. "She wanted a crowd," he murmured. "Don't give her silence." Karen cleared her throat. "As many of you know," she said, "a certain vehicle has caused disruption in our reserve calculations." A few neighbors craned their necks toward the window. The Porsche glowed under the street lamp like a challenge. Karen nodded at it dramatically, then lifted her clipboard high. "This Porsche," she declared, "must be placed under HOA ownership for proper management until its compliance can be guaranteed." A murmur rippled through the room. Someone whispered, "She's finally trying to take it." I stood. "No," I said. "We're not letting you rewrite the rules mid-sentence." Karen tightened her grip on the clipboard. "Sir, you may speak only when I held up the printed ledger, the real ledger Miller had forced from their server logs yesterday. 6 pages, not 2 lines. The corner stamped with the HOA's internal server ID. This, I said, is your actual financial record, the one that mentions the Porsche by value VIN fragment and color code." A wave of whispers surged. The treasurer shifted on his feet behind Karen. Karen stepped forward. "That ledger is not authenticated. It came from your server," I said, keeping my voice even. "The one your treasurer last accessed at 11:11 a.m., right before emailing the edited version." The treasurer's eyes shot to the floor. He clasped his hands behind his back like a kid caught pocketing candy. Karen reached out. "Give that to me." I didn't move. She stepped closer and tried to snatch the top page fingers grazing the corner, but Miller slid in between us like he'd rehearsed the move. Touching evidence, he said calmly, would be a poor decision in front of 50 witnesses. Karen's jaw twitched. I held the ledger higher. "Why," I asked loudly enough for the back row to hear, "did you file Form 14B for our Porsche?" The room went still. Karen blinked rapidly. That was a draft, a concept standard preliminary. "You typed in the make the color and the VIN fragment," I said. "That's not a concept. That's an attempt." Miller added, "An attempt to insert a resident's vehicle into the association's asset list." All eyes turned to Karen. Her knuckles whitened around her clipboard. She looked at the neighbors, too many eyes, too much pressure. She glanced at the treasurer, who refused to look back. Then her voice cracked. She swallowed. "It should have been ours, not yours." The words burst out like she'd been holding them behind her teeth. Gasps shot across the room. Someone muttered, "She admitted it." My wife, sitting near the aisle, let out a single disbelieving laugh. Karen realized what she'd said half a second too late. She tried to backpedal. I meant it should have been handled under our governance, but the room wasn't buying it. Miller crossed his arms. I think the judge, he said loud and clear, will like that sentence a lot. Neighbors murmured harder now, chairs creaking, people shifting as if the air itself had changed weight. Karen lowered her clipboard, finally understanding she'd just wrecked her own show. And outside the window, the pink Porsche gleamed like it knew it had won the first round. The courtroom felt colder than usual, like someone had turned the vents to interrogation setting. Rows of wooden benches lined the chamber, polished so many times they reflected the overhead fluorescence in thin stripes. At 08:42 a.m., a clerk stamped the first sheet on the judge's desk. Filed. The red ink bled slightly into the paper fibers. The sound of the stamp thunk landed like a premonition. Miller leaned toward me. She's rattled. Look at her hands. I followed his gaze. Karen Hudson sat at the plaintiff table, posture straight, but fingers tapping the clipboard in a jittery rhythm she couldn't hide. Beside her, the treasurer avoided eye contact the way guilty men do with a fixed stare at nothing. The judge entered. The room rose, her expression unreadable, her tone sharp enough to cut through drywall. Sit, she ordered. Karen flashed a rehearsed smile at the judge, then at the spectators. Her lipstick looked freshly reapplied, but her confidence had cracks. Miller stood first. Your Honor, he said, sliding a folder onto the desk with deliberate calm. The defendant moves for an emergency freeze of the HOA reserve fund, pending investigation into attempted asset reassignment and ledger tampering. Karen's head jerked toward him. That motion is baseless, she snapped. There was no tampering, only a preliminary draft. Miller held up the two ledgers. The HOA's official server poll, the two-line edited version. He didn't speak. He simply let the judge compare them. The silence was lethal. The judge turned toward Karen. Mrs. Hudson, who modified this ledger. Karen's mouth opened, closed, opened again. It was streamlined. Your Honor, for readability. Readable, the judge repeated, is not the same thing as truthful. The treasurer coughed into his fist. Everyone heard the guilt in it. Miller pressed Your Honor. The ledger contains a line item, community vehicle upgrade. $4,900, which coincides precisely with Mrs. Hudson's attempt to file Form 14B asset reassignment for the Sawyer's Porsche. Whispers erupted in the back rows. Karen slammed her clipboard onto the table. That Porsche disrupts uniform standards. It's too conspicuous, too unregulated, too... The judge raised a hand. Enough. She turned toward the treasurer. Who authorized the vehicle upgrade expense? He froze. His eyes flicked to Karen, then to the judge, then back to Karen. His throat bobbed. I didn't authorize it. The judge pivoted to Karen. Mrs. Hudson, did you authorize it? Karen swallowed hard. It was procedural. That's not an answer. Karen's voice trembled. It was necessary for community cohesion. Miller stepped forward. With respect. Your Honor, Mrs. Hudson tried to claim our client's vehicle as HOA property, then buried the ledger entry that funded the attempt. We are requesting a full freeze until your office completes an audit. The judge leaned back, fingers steepled. You're asking me, she said slowly, to halt every function of the HOA reserve maintenance landscaping emergency repairs based on allegations of misappropriation. No, Miller said. We're asking you to halt it based on evidence. He placed the final page on the bench, a server log printout showing edit timestamp 9 minutes before transmission. The judge exhaled. Mrs. Hudson, do you have an explanation? Karen's silence was the explanation. The judge picked up her pen. Freeze granted. A shockwave traveled through the courtroom, muttered curses. Sharp inhales, a neighbor whispering, "Oh, damn!" She lost the fund. Karen shot to her feet. You can't. That fund is the backbone of this community. The judge didn't look at her. You should have considered that before altering financial records and attempting to claim a resident's private vehicle. Then she delivered the line that would be repeated at mailboxes, BBQ pits, and porch rails for months. You tried claiming their car. Now the court is claiming your fund." A collective, "Oh," moved through the room. Karen collapsed into her chair, clipboard slipping from her fingers. Outside the window, through the narrow courthouse blinds, I could see the pink Porsche in the parking lot sunlight glancing off the hood like the car itself was smirking. For the first time since this nonsense began, I felt the scales tilt. Miller whispered, "She walked right into the trap." I nodded. Finally, I said under my breath, someone fought back. A bailiff posted the signed freeze order on the bulletin board. HOA Reserve Fund frozen, and Maple Ridge would never look at Karen the same way again. The notice went up on the bulletin board sometime before sunrise. By the time I walked past the community center on my way to the diner, it was fresh paper, crooked thumbtack, the Maple Ridge letterhead sitting on top of 6 words that didn't seem real. HOA dues collection paused until further notice. No fine print, no threat language, just that. The corkboard around it was almost bare. The usual flyers for pressure washing and babysitting pushed aside, so this one sat alone in the center like the main act. Someone had even dragged a folding chair over in front of it, as if people had been stopping long enough to need a seat. A man I recognized from 2 streets over stood there scratching his head. "They actually paused dues," he said when he saw me. "Thought I'd sooner see pigs fly than Karen lose a payment." I shrugged. "Court order will do that to you." He let out a low whistle. "What else did she claim, you think?" The question wasn't just about the car. I could hear it in his voice. Inside the diner, the morning rush sounded different. Usually, it was just the clatter of plates and the soft murmur of talk about weather or grandkids or football. Today, every sentence seemed to include the word Karen. I slid into a booth by the window. The vinyl squeaked under me. From here, I could see straight out to the intersection where Maple Ridge's big sign sat the shiny Port 1207 HOA Ownership Rules plaque catching the light. Miller sat across from me already halfway through a mug of coffee that had seen better days. He didn't seem to notice. "So the notice went up," he said. "Center of the board," I replied. Dews paused. People are staring like they just saw the ocean for the first time. He nodded, unsurprised. Freeze the fund, and the board starts to panic. Panic spreads faster than any HOA newsletter. A waitress topped off our cups without asking. She leaned in a little. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. "They can't take dues right now, judge's order," Miller said, "until they explain where the money went." She shook her head, almost smiling. "About time someone put a leash on that lady." She moved on to the next table, and the guy in the corner booth raised his voice just enough for us to hear. "I heard she tried to claim a boat last year," he was saying. "Told the guy it counted as communal lake access. He caved." "Yeah," his friend replied. "Not this time. She picked the wrong couple." Miller gave me a look over his mug. "You hearing this, I'm trying not to enjoy it too much," I said. He smirked. "Enjoy it. You paid enough in dues to earn front row seats." The bell over the door jingled. My wife walked in, hair still damp from a quick shower scrub top swapped for a faded sweatshirt. She slid in next to me, the booth shifting under our combined weight. "You see the board?" she asked. "I did," I said. "You." She nodded. Half the neighborhood was standing there. "I think they were afraid if they blinked the notice would disappear." Miller chuckled. "That's what happens when people get used to power only going one direction." She wrapped her hands around the coffee cup the waitress put down in front of her. "They took the sticker off the Porsche," she added. I straightened. "Who did Caldwell?" she said. "You know the older guy Karen always uses to deliver bad news? I saw him walking past with a scraper and a rag. He didn't say anything, just peeled the last residue off and tossed it in a bag like he was burying evidence." "How'd that feel?" I asked. She looked out the window for a second. "Like getting my name back," she said softly. For a while there, I felt like the car belonged more to her paperwork than to me. At the counter, another conversation rose above the clink of silverware. What else did she claim a man in a work jacket was asking? If she tried to take a car, what's to say she wasn't eyeing our RVs? Our sheds. Hell, my wife's piano, a woman replied. I've been paying those fines for 10 years. Pallet violation, seasonal wreath rules, garden gnome limits. If they were all bogus. Her voice trailed off, but the anger stayed in the air. Miller leaned back, watching the room like a referee who'd seen this game before. This, he said quietly, is what an audit is for. People are finally asking the right question. If she tried to claim your car, what else did she slide into those ledgers? So what's next? My wife asked. County auditors, Miller said. They'll come in, pull records, dig through 7 years of spending. Every community enhancement, every vehicle upgrade, every pallet enforcement fine. It all goes under the microscope. Think they'll find anything I asked? He gave me a look that said you already know the answer. I don't ask judges to freeze funds for fun, he said. Audit is next. And, after that, corrections. The bell jingled again. 2 of our neighbors from down the block walked in, spotted us, and changed course to our booth. Hey, one of them said, an older guy in a veteran's ball cap. Didn't want to bother you, but he hesitated, then stuck out his hand. Thank you, he said, for not rolling over. Most of us just paid and grumbled. You actually pushed back. I shook his hand. I just didn't like someone acting like they owned my wife's car. He snorted. She's been acting like she owns everybody's everything for years. His buddy, a quiet man who rarely said more than 2 words at the mailbox, surprised me. He looked me in the eye and said, clear enough for the nearby tables to hear. Finally, someone checked her power. The words hung there heavier than they sounded. They moved on to find a table. My wife stared down at her coffee, then back up at me. Feels different today, she said. Like the whole place is lighter. It is, Miller said. You cut the power at the source. Now everyone can see how dark it was. Outside the diner window, a pickup drove past with the Maple Ridge Bulletin folded on the dash. The Diaz paused headline facing up like a trophy. Miller finished his coffee and set the mug down. County's got the audit schedule in motion, he said. Hudson's going to find herself explaining line items she never thought anyone would see. I watched the steam rise off the grill, heard the low hum of a dozen conversations all centered on the same name. Karen wasn't a force anymore. She was a cautionary tale in progress. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from a board member I barely knew. She's losing them. People are talking about removal. I turned the screen so Miller and my wife could see. Looks like the fund wasn't the only thing that got frozen, I said. Miller smiled, slow and satisfied. Karen's losing the board, he said. The county audit team arrived without warning. 3 officials stepping out of 2 sedans and a white SUV, badges clipped to belts. Clipboards ready. They didn't knock. They just walked straight toward the Maple Ridge HOA office like they already owned the place. I stood with Miller on the sidewalk. He nodded toward the blinds. See that treasurer just ducked behind the file cabinet. Inside, the HOA office looked smaller than I remembered, fluorescent lights humming posters of community rules lining the wall, a corkboard full of notices Karen had signed herself. Karen stood stiffly near the copier blazer too formal for the room, clipboard clutched like a shield. The lead auditor, Reyes, held up her badge. Mrs. Hudson, your reserve fund is under judicial freeze. We're here to review all financial activity. Karen forced a smile. That won't be necessary. Our records are internal. Reyes cut her off. Not anymore. 2 auditors began scanning the paper files while another plugged into the HOA's desktop. Rows of numbers flashed across the monitor. Start with the last 3 years, Reyes said. Flag anything labeled enhancement upgrade or pallet compliance. The treasurer hovered by the door like he was considering escape. The auditor at the computer spoke first. 11 irregular transactions so far. Karen blinked. Irregular how? No attached invoices, he said. And all just under audit trigger thresholds. He scrolled again. Leadership retreat, $4,500. Advisory decor consulting, $1,900. Community morale weekend, $3,200. And he tapped the screen. Vehicle upgrade, $4,900. I felt that one in my teeth. Reyes faced the treasurer. Who approved these? He hesitated, then looked at Karen with an expression that could only be described as surrender. "She did," he said. Karen signed everything. Karen spun toward him. "You agreed with these decisions." "Don't you dare! I signed what you gave me," he whispered. "You said nobody checks the details." Reyes made a note. "Mrs. Hudson, is that accurate?" Karen straightened, trying to pull authority from thin air. "I made necessary choices. Someone has to protect the community." Reyes raised an eyebrow. By attempting to classify a resident's Porsche as an HOA asset, Karen's composure shattered. "I was protecting the community," she shouted. "People like them think they can just buy their way in." Her voice echoed off the walls. Outside, two neighbors stopped mid-walk staring in. Miller leaned in and murmured, "She's giving us testimony for free." The auditor at the printer handed Reyes a fresh sheet. She reviewed it, then lowered the page so the board members now gathering by the wall could see. 11 questionable expenditures, she said. All without board votes. All tied to Mrs. Hudson's unilateral approvals. A board member, Caldwell, let out a low exhale, not quite relief, but close. Reyes continued, effective immediately. The Maple Ridge HOA loses authority to levy fines or collect dues pending full county review. Karen staggered back a half step. "You can't suspend us." "This community depends on me," Noreye said flatly. "It depends on accountability." The treasurer slumped into a chair, covering his face with both hands. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath until I let it out. 3 days later, the real blow landed. Every household received a county-sealed envelope. Our street looked like Christmas morning neighbors standing on porches tearing letters open, comparing pages with disbelief. My wife met me at the door holding our envelope. "Open it," she said. Inside was a 1-page letter and a check. "Based on preliminary findings, you are eligible for a 25 to 30% refund of HOA dues paid over the last 3 years. She blinked twice. "This is thousands." On the sidewalk, a man shouted, "She owes us this money, for real." Another neighbor waved his refund letter like a victory flag. Miller called as we stepped outside. "Refunds across the board," he said. "Audit team found exactly what we expected. Mismanagement, unauthorized spending, claim attempts, and a whole lot of ego." Across the street, a board member read his own refund letter, then looked toward Karen's house with a stunned expression. Karen herself stood on her porch a few houses down. Envelope unopened, shoulders drawn tight. For the first time since this fight began, no one approached her. No one asked her what the rules were. No one deferred. A county SUV rolled slowly past. Reyes sat in the passenger seat reviewing notes on a tablet. She glanced from the refunds to the block, then to Karen, who stood frozen like someone waiting for a verdict that had already arrived. As the SUV passed our driveway, I heard Reyes say, "It calm, final." "It's over, Ms. Hudson." Karen didn't argue. And Maple Ridge, for the first time in years, finally felt like it belonged to the residents, not the person who tried to claim everything for herself. The morning air on Maple Ridge Lane felt different, lighter, like someone had finally opened a window that had been sealed shut for years. My wife rolled the garage door open, sunlight cutting across the concrete. The pink Porsche sat in the center like a reclaimed trophy. No sticker, no HOA tag, no claim notice taped to the windshield. Just her car, exactly the way it should have been from the start. She pressed the key fob. The blinkers flashed a small defiant celebration. Behind her, mounted on the garage wall, the freeze order hung in a simple black frame. Next to it, the refund letter with the county seal. Both had become part of our little museum of what it took to get here. "You ready?" I asked. She ran her hand over the hood, the paint catching the light. "I've been waiting weeks to drive this thing without someone watching me," she said. "Let's make it count." She got an engine humming to life with a confident growl, and something strange happened. Nothing beeped. No gate alert. No HOA camera whirring to attention. Just silence. She looked at me, a shocked smile forming. First time that gate didn't breathe down my neck. We pulled out onto Maple Ridge Lane. The neighborhood looked normal, peaceful, the kind of morning community brochures always pretend to show. But the real change wasn't the sunlight or the trimmed lawns, it was the bulletin boards. Every board on every corner now had blank spaces, big, empty rectangles where Karen's notices used to sit like commandments. Someone had peeled off her name from the Rules Committee plaque. On one board, the thumbtacks were still hanging crooked like whoever removed the paperwork had done it fast, almost relieved. A neighbor, watering his lawn, waved. Another paused her morning walk, smiling softly as we rolled past. The Porsche moved clean and free down the street, its first unchallenged drive since this whole mess began. "You see that," my wife said, nodding toward the clubhouse. The main bulletin board stood bare except for one fresh sheet, refund processing. 25 to 30% of prior dues checks issued by County Auditor's Office. No HOA logo, no Karen signature, no threats, just facts. A small group of residents stood reading it, murmuring. They turned when they heard the Porsche, and instead of frowns or the old judging glances, they just smiled. One even gave a thumbs up. "It feels so strange," she whispered. "Like the street is actually ours." "It is," I said. "Always was. Just took a while for people to remember." We drove a slow loop around the cul-de-sac. Kids were chalking on the sidewalk something Karen once tried to fine a family for calling it visual disruption. A retired couple was hanging a wind chime that would have triggered a violation notice last year. The sound carried like a tiny rebellion. Every detail looked like breathing room. She turned onto the main exit road. "Where to?" I asked. She grinned. "Doesn't matter, as long as no one claims it halfway there." That hit harder than she meant it to. A quiet stretch passed before she spoke again, softer this time. "I just wanted to drive my own car," she said. "That's all I ever wanted. No paperwork, no notices, no threats, just my car." I looked at her hands, steady on the wheel, sunlight in her eyes. "And now, you can," I said. "All of this court freeze order audit, it finally means something." She nodded, exhaling the kind of breath people hold for months without noticing. When we reached the neighborhood gate, she slowed down. The stone pillars stood quiet, no cameras swiveling, no lights blinking. Someone had removed the little HOA vehicle verification required sign entirely. Only the metal bolts remained. She rolled through the Porsche, gliding forward without resistance. Halfway past the gate, she said it again, not angry, not shaken, just free. "I can finally drive my own car." I placed my hand over hers. "And you're never losing it to anyone's clipboard again." She smiled, and for the first time since this started, I saw no fear behind it. At the stop sign, she braked gently. The road stretched out ahead, open, clean, unclaimed. She looked at me with a mix of relief and pride. "You know," she said, "I didn't think anyone would ever stand up to her." I looked back toward the neighborhood behind us, quiet, peaceful, whole again. "Someone did," I said. "I think we just proved it." She eased the Porsche forward, the engine settling into a smooth rumble. The gates shrank behind us as the road opened wide. And with the softest smile, more grateful than triumphant, she whispered the line that closed the book on Karen Hudson's reign. Finally, someone fought back. The posted freeze order still hung in my garage, its county seal catching the light as the Porsche rolled out clean and unclaimed. The lane felt honest again, neighbors nodding as if a weight had finally been scraped off the community like old tape. It reminded me that power only works when people look away, and justice shows up when someone finally refuses to. Justice isn't loud, it's steady. And as my wife drove past the quiet gate, I knew this whole street had learned the same lesson. Finally, someone fought back.